Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajim. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamu-alaikum. Jiayanu, Pakhair-agale, Nihao, Chunashumme, Washmale, Ohio Gonzaimas, Guten Morgen, Hola, Bonjour, Privyet, Kaifahal, Halashuma Chatore, Ahlan Wasal, Marhaba, Buna, Mucho, Gracias, Suaviab, Bali Karaya, and thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in to PTV World. You watching World this morning alongside Shahzad Asar Khan. I hope and pray that everybody out there in 46 different countries is ready to kickstart their week and day with us. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, while I was actually traveling to work today, I kind of realized that, hey, you know what? Everybody is actually going towards their workplaces or universities or schools, and that too in full strength. So please make sure that whoever is going out, make sure that you follow all the SOPs as well. And if, God forbid, you haven't vaccinated yourself, please make sure that you do so, because obviously we really want you to be healthier. We want you to be safe from this pandemic or from COVID-19 as well. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, it's Monday over here in Islamabad. The weather is changing. Well, you know, where I was praying Isha somewhat around at 8:30, now it has come down to 7:30 as well. So please make sure that you are actually kind of praying 5 times a day as well. Make sure that you take out time as well. But we actually have a small report on what this is something which we need to talk about right after you kind of come back after the report, ladies and gentlemen. So please go ahead, take a look at this report, and then we will continue with this conversation.
Growing urban affluence tends to have profound environmental consequences, but the net impact depends heavily on how the transition is managed. The promise of jobs and prosperity, among other factors, pulls people to cities. Half of the global population already lives in cities, and by 2050, two-thirds of the world's population are expected to live in urban areas. But in cities, two of the most pressing problems facing the world today also come together: poverty and environmental degradation. Poor air and water quality, insufficient water availability, waste disposal problems, and high energy consumption are exacerbated by the increasing population density and demands of urban environments. Strong city planning will be essential in managing these and other difficulties as the world's urban areas swell. Intensive urban growth can lead to greater poverty, with local governments unable to provide services for all the people. Concentrated energy use leads to greater air pollution with significant impact on human health. Automobile exhaust produces elevated lead levels in urban air. Large volumes of uncollected waste create multiple health hazards. Urban development can magnify pollution, and physical barriers to root growth promote loss of urban tree cover. Animal populations are inhabited by toxic substances, vehicles, and the loss of habitat and food sources.
So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, we've actually given away quite a lot of facts and figures as well. And yes, I believe that when we talk about development, when we talk about personal development, I think that, you know, everybody's got the right to move from a very rural area to an urban area as well. And that too to seek or probably look out for more opportunities so that they can grow personally, individually, and then as a community and society as well. But what have we done so far? I mean, did we actually plan that, okay, you know, where, you know, when Pakistan came into being back in 1947, the percentage or the ratio was probably 80 to 20%, where 80% people used to live within the rural areas, and then there were 20% population of the people who used to live in the urban areas. But, you know, since the influx of people coming towards the urban areas, looking for more better opportunities, education, health facilities for their families and kids as well, I think we kind of lost our direction, and I'm sorry to say that, and it's because of the fact that we didn't really plan quite a lot on this as well. And what we have seen lately is, well, alhamdulillah, thanks to the Ministry of Climate Change, that they actually came up with this initiative of urban forests as well, where they have taken this initiative of 51 urban forests in Lahore, 50 in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, 20 in Islamabad, and 5 in Karachi, where I think that, you know, it should have been the other way around, where we might have probably looked for 50 urban forests in Karachi and then probably 20 or 5 or 10 in Islamabad as well. But whatever it is, I think that it's a great initiative. The initiative was alhamdulillah taken by our Prime Minister, Mr. Imran Khan Sahab as well. And they are doing this urban forestation with the help of the Miyawaki technique. What is that technique is something which we'll build up on. But not just that. Now imagine that when there was a larger influx of people or a larger number of people coming to cities or to the urban areas, obviously we needed more transport, obviously we needed more solutions so that people could go from one place to another. But hey, did we actually think about it? Did we actually think about green or economical solutions? Because for all of these cars we're roaming around each and every day have such emissions which are kind of contributing to climate change as well. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we will be talking about urbanization, we'll be talking about urban forest or forestry for that reason as well. And how do you think that we can use clean techniques or we can bring in those technologies which are going to make sure that we're not impacting the climate change in an adverse condition as well. So to kind of have this conversation, we're very lucky that we've actually been joined by somebody who happens to be the Director of Public Policy at Rifa University. Ladies and gentlemen, he is Dr. Rashid Aftab Saab. Hello sir, Assalamu alaikum, good morning, how are you?
Walaikum Assalam, very good morning to all of you.
Thank you very much sir for joining us. Wonderful to
my
always
pleasure.
be in conversation with somebody who's affiliated with the university, and
My pleasure.
it's because of the fact that early in the morning they look fresh. No matter what happens, they have this habit of waking up early and look fresh anyways as well. So thank you very much sir for
Jazakallah.
joining us.
Jazakallah.
Wonderful to have you, and alongside Dr. Rashid, ladies and gentlemen, we're lucky that we've actually been joined by the former IG Forest Ministry of Climate Change as well. He happens to be Sayyid Mahmood Nasir Saab. Hello sir, Assalamu alaikum, good morning.
Thank you.
I love the energy, sir. Thank you very much for joining us. Wonderful to have you over here on the show. And last but not the least, ladies and gentlemen, the lady will be making sense, or will be talking sense, ladies and gentlemen, or who will be actually sharing her views because of the fact that she happens to be a developmental practitioner as well. She is Miss Aisha Majid. Hello, Assalamu alaikum, good morning.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for having me.
Walaikum assalam, and thank you very much for joining us. So first things first, sir. I think, Dr. Saab, I'll start my conversation with you because you wanted to speak about urbanization. Everybody loves urbanization. Everybody loves to come to the cities, go to good schools, have good hospitals, good healthcare facilities, gyms, malls. We can buy whatever we want. We can live the life we want. But how much do you think this want has costed us, from urbanization when we talk about it, and not in the right direction? I think that's something which we want to talk about. So let's create this base first and then move on to forestry.
Thank you very much. You have just, in your introductory remarks, you have reflected one of the statistics that in 1947 or 50s, about 20% people
Yeah.
were living in the urban
Took it
area.
from you. Yeah.
And 80%, that
Yeah.
was the divide between urban and rural.
Yeah.
So right now it is about 45% are living in the urban areas and 55% living in the rural area.
Yeah.
It means almost 50% is a division of. So what does it mean? It means it's an urban sanctuary. And when we talk about urban sanctuary, we have to think about in terms of urban ecology. And the major variables, there are three major variables of urban ecology. One is the infrastructure, other is livelihood, and third is environment.
Yep.
As far as environment, I think my other two colleagues are going to discuss that aspects. And these three variables are interconnected.
Yeah.
We have to undertake a holistic approach whenever we talk about urbanization, urban forest, urban environment,
Yeah.
livelihood,
But
whatsoever.
have we taken a holistic approach so far since 1947?
It's a debatable issue. Obviously, it's always remained a fragmented approach. Since there are so many stakeholders are involved, plus three levels of governments exist in Pakistan. So I think there is a lot of gaps exist in our policy and planning in both of the systems.
True.
Then we have to look into the two factors are very critical.
Sir.
And one is the push factors and other are the pull factors.
Yeah.
When we talk about the push factors, obviously it involves housing, education, health, livelihood, infrastructure. These are the push factors. Yeah. And the pull factors means the employment, high wages, standards of living,
Yeah.
future of youth. All these are the pull factors. Unless until there is a balance between the push factors and the pull factors, so it will be hard to have a sustained urban centers.
Exactly.
Then we have to see what are the major issues with urbanization, which is very much real, and it's not only for Pakistan. It's happening all over the world. Although cities in Pakistan or even in the rest of the world are considered to be the engine of growth, because in Pakistan more than 65% of the GDP comes from the cities. 95% of the tax
Goes
is
from-
collected from the 10 to 14 major cities of this country.
Which is why I'm thinking, I'm actually going to go and settle in a village as well, so that I don't have to pay higher taxes. Yes, please.
So when we talk about the urban issues, it means housing, it means law and order, it means education, it means health, it means
Transportation.
energy, water, security, and one of the major issue which I come across, there is a very weak and fragile coordination among the various agencies which are responsible for the urban development.
So, sir, what I'm going to do is that I'm actually going to stop you over here and move on to the former IG of Forest as well, because this is where you said that we do have these gaps and spaces in between. But, sir, I think that Dr. Saab has rightly pointed out, when we talk about water scarcity, I think it's one of the most important issues all over the world these days. I mean, half of Islamabad is getting new bores done as well because, for 200 feet down, there's no water now. And probably talking about food security for that reason, we know that there are certain specific issues related to that as well. People, or in fact, the entire world is moving towards organic farming and organic foods as well. Do you think that, organic farming can be the solution? Or for that matter, why do you think that we weren't setting that kind of a status for ourselves as well, where, everybody could enjoy the same things? You go 50 kilometers outside Islamabad, and that's where people say usually that, that's where Pakistan starts. We cannot take Islamabad as an example. We really need to kind of inculcate an example which probably relates to the masses out there as well. So please build up on this.
My habit is to go a step backwards.
Okay.
And connecting what you have said.
Which is why I took you 50 kilometers outside Islamabad.
I am taking you 50 or 150 years outside Islamabad.
All right, sir.
So the story is like that every 100 years the human population globally would increase by 1 billion.
Yeah.
That's what is the trend, except for the last 1 century. In the year 1901, the world population was hardly 1 billion or 2 billion.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be 3 billion by the year 2000, but it was more than 5 billion.
Yeah.
And in the last 20 years, 22 years, 21 years, we are in 2021, it is now exceeding 7 point some, reaching 8 billion.
Yeah.
So why this happened only in the last 100 years?
Yeah.
There were major wars, there were major pandemics, everything was there. What happened? The story is that human innovation, there was an invention in 1901 that was the cheap way to produce urea, the backbone of agriculture. From nitrogen was pumped from the air, and through a cheap chemical process, urea khat was fertilizer was available globally, and it reached the entire world in 50-60 years. So there was a huge growth of food production. There was a lot of food production, and the laws of economics, and my colleagues would say, would second me, when there is a lot of production, it creates its own demand. So human population also increased. If you had to feed the entire world on organic or fertilizer, you won't have space left for urban areas. You are talking about 50 kilometers from Islamabad. I happen to be posted in many remote areas of Pakistan. And just 20 years, in the last 20 years, there is huge changes have happened. True. In the remote villages of Tonsa or even Miawali or Bhakkar or in Chitral. Coming to Islamabad or Lahore was a feast. Yeah. To urban areas. Now everything is available in rural areas and in some shanty towns where there used to be wildlife, wetlands. There are plazas of 5-story plazas there, and electricity is all over. And light pollution is one of the major pollutions globally. So these things are happening. And on the other side, there is a lot of development towards organic agriculture. And those who believe in that are working hard. They are finding ways to meet the increasing demand of the people. Now there is a competition between the chemical fertilizer producers. The Roundup, you know, this Roundup is a chemical that is sprayed on crops, and it has proven carcinogenic effects, and it's available in almost every store in big store in US. It's available in Pakistan. It's available globally. So you and me and even the organic farmers are not immune to the side effects of that chemical. It's not fertilizer. It is a weedicide. So things are moving in some direction which nobody can say where we will be leading to. The last sentence, because of being in the biological sciences and then going to the anthropological sciences, one of our professors was giving a lecture on this, and he referred to an essay which the title of which was A Journey from Bombay to London, a journey from city center to city center. So we are probably moving towards that direction. Let's see what happens.
From city center to another city center, ladies and gentlemen, that's very rightfully said as well. But sir, kind of building up on that, and since I, right at the beginning of the program, I mentioned that Ministry of Climate Change has announced that there's going to be urban forestation within the cities as well. May it be Lahore, may it be Islamabad, Karachi, or Khyber Pakhtunkhwa for that reason. But what they're claiming is something which looks like that it might be little hard to achieve as well. So they're saying 51 in Lahore, 50 in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, 20 in Islamabad, and 5 in Karachi. Even though that there are some in Karachi as of now as well, and people can pretty much see that. But do you think that that's going to actually change the direction in near future as well? That okay, we're moving towards, even if because the urbanization, sir, is inevitable. It's going to take place no matter what happens, and everybody wants to construct a 5-story plaza so that they can have rent and have a retired life. Not thinking about where the food's going to come from. But we still have to kind of find ways around it, and that's what people are doing. They're doing farming within the sheds as well. Now there's indoor farming, may it be organic or may it be otherwise as well. So people are looking for smart solutions. So do you think these urban forests are actually going to be the solution in near future?
There are always positive and negative sides. You have to see which way it's going. The way the positive side is has never been so much investment and availability of funds to the forestry practitioners in the history of Pakistan. On the other side, going too fast into something which appears to be very good in Japan or anywhere else, and the cost per acre is many times more than the conventional forestry, is the other side. And the very critical issue is that forestry is a slow process, and every species which has been recommended, it has hundreds of years of practice, and what is the spacing, what is the solution to undertake when there is a problem with the forest.
Exactly.
Now this is a first time issue in Pakistan, and we are just going in implementation rather than first experimentation and then implementation, and finding a cheaper way in a poor country. And this is no art that we are investing 120 or 150 billion rupees on tree plantation. That is the cost per plant is very high, whereas trees don't come through plantation. See any forest, they come as a result of the natural environment, and rainfall is the main factor.
True.
The more rainfall, the diversity of species is more, the size of the trees is high. Imagine the Amazon forest or the Congo Basin forest or the Far East forest, and even some areas in Pakistan. The nearest one is Murray, where the annual average rainfall is around 50 inches. So you see lush green huge trees, but you go down in Sindh or the plains of Punjab, the rainfall is less than 10 inches. There used to be forests, and still there are some pockets, but the trees are slow growing, and the distance between tree to tree is too much, and nature has left huge areas as grassland, and grasses are also green. they also sequester carbon. It's a matter of managing it for sustainability.
And thank you very much, sir, for pointing it out as well. And I think it's really important, which is why they say that, first you really need to think and then probably take a leap as well. So we've taken a leap, and I think we'll be thinking afterwards as well, which is why, there's this wonderful quotation of Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and he used to say that I take a decision and then make it right. So probably we're in that direction. But moving on to Miss Aisha now. So Miss Aisha, the world's moving towards smart motorways, electric vehicles, making sure that, whatever carbon emission their cars were making, they're not going to make it. They have these Euro 1, Euro 2, Euro 5, 6, 7 standards, which they kind of put stickers onto their vehicles as well, that, hey, you know what, we are, environment friendly, we are producing environment friendly cars, and we do not want to contribute to the emissions or whatever is happening. There's ozone depletion, there's climate change, there's so many other factors. What would you suggest? Because we have had metros, thankfully, we really didn't have to go farther than the roads we had already, so we went under them or above them, which I believe was great. But I think that we could have thought about a smarter solution rather than bringing in those petrol and diesel engines once again.
Thank you so much for actually pointing it out, because one of the most important things for improving the environment right now is to introduce a good and holistic public transport system. True. Because cars are actually contributing to the problem, not just in terms of their emissions, but you see that when we have to accommodate cars, or when we have to facilitate vehicular movement, we actually have to destroy a lot of the environment and ecosystem that is within the cities. Yeah. For example, if you see in Islamabad, we have destroyed a lot of green belts just to accommodate car parking areas and to expand roads.
Yeah. So just on the Srinagar highway, I've seen one. Yeah.
Not just that, even if you go up to Damaneko and you have a look at Islamabad, you'll see how the balance between green and grey has become destroyed. Yeah. We see a lot of grey, and the beauty of Islamabad was in the green. Yeah. And you don't see that anymore, and that's because you've expanded roads to a level where it is actually becoming a hassle now.
And even then you don't find a spot to kind of fit in, around 2 o'clock when it's like the schools are getting off. When it's 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, you still do not find a place to kind of move around.
And it's not just that, it's so hard to, move around in Islamabad now, because it takes you, I don't know, maybe half an hour to just reach from one end to the other when it was just 5 minutes away.
That's true.
So just today it took me 1.5 hours to actually get here, because and that was on the expressway, which is like huge. I mean, I don't know how far you can expand it now, because that's the extent that you've reached. Yeah. So the problem is not just e-vehicles or improving the petrol quality. That's one of the solutions. However, you need a holistic plan where you actually move people, not cars. So for that, I think public transportation is one of the most important things. And not just public transportation, you need to make sure that you allow other forms of mobility, because mobility is not just moving cars. Yeah. It's actually about moving people, and that means that you should allow other modes of mobility, such as walking, bicycles. You need to allow
if it has taken you 1.5 hours to reach over here, obviously you couldn't have walked, right? This is something which we really need to be realistic in this approach as well. Obviously, we need to move people. What are the other methods or mediums which we can use is something which we should talk about. But not just that. I think as of now, when we talk about the transportation system in Islamabad and Rawalpindi, it's quite good. We talk about metro. I think that they provide service, and it is being used by over a lot of people, hundreds and thousands of people, and they kind of are happy with that. I think what we need to do is that we need to instill this habit of telling people that, hey, you know what, other than taking out your own car, either take a bicycle, either take an electric bike. We have easy bikes over here somewhere in Islamabad as well. So I think we need to mentor people on that as well.
Yeah, exactly. When it comes to reshaping urban mobility, there are two aspects to it.
Sure.
The first one is the policies and the infrastructure that is required for eco-mobility, and the other one is behavior change.
Yep.
Because there is a lot of stigma attached to using public transport, which I don't understand why it is, because in the developed countries what you see is that people, even who are, you know, like who belong to rich classes, they often use public transportation as well, including the subways and the
Because they know they're rich, they have a car at
Yeah,
home.
yeah.
They don't have to show it to anybody.
Yeah, so but in Pakistan, unfortunately, not just in Pakistan, in other developing countries as well, owning a vehicle has become a status symbol.
Yeah,
And I think that's something that we need to change,
exactly.
because we're destroying the environment.
So we will definitely come back to, you know, how or what suggestions you have and how can we change. But I think amidst COVID, it's better to use your own vehicle rather than going into public transport. I think that's very important as well. But ladies and gentlemen, we actually have a comprehensive report on how we can probably change the transportation methods within the urbanized cities. Please go ahead, take a look. And once you guys will come back, I'll go back to Dr. Saab and talk further about the push and pull factors as well. So let's go.
Transportation systems, from infrastructures to vehicle operations, have environmental impacts ranging from noise, the emission of pollutants, to climate change. The issue of transportation and the environment is paradoxical, since transportation conveys substantial socio-economic benefits, but at the same time transportation is impacting environmental systems. On one side, transportation activities support increasing mobility demands for passengers and freight, while on the other, transport activities are associated with environmental impacts. Further, environmental conditions impact transportation systems in terms of operating conditions and infrastructure requirements such as construction and maintenance. The continuous increase of vehicle fleet, along with the development of road transport networks, has associated a wide range of externalities. Main types of externalities refer to environmental impact, expressed as raw materials depletion, energy and fuel consumption or disruption of ecosystem equilibrium, social impact, expressed as quality of people life, human health and economic impact, expressed as economic growth. The current development of road transport promotes a growing interest for sustainable and eco-friendly transportation worldwide.
And that's what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, eco-friendly and sustainable transportation systems. We'll move back to that as well, because Ms. Aisha, I think, has got another idea which she wanted to share with the world, and not a lot many people actually know about it. So we'll come back to that. But moving back to Dr. Saab over here. So Dr. Saab, we were somewhere around push and pull factors. Where you were like that, you know, you categorize that, okay, you know, these are the push factors where we talked about infrastructure, schools, hospitals, and the pull factors were the employment, you know, and all of those other things as well. So sir, now building up on that, you know, when we talk about urbanization, we really need to find a balance. You know, we cannot kind of go on and construct and then house societies. And these societies these days, you know, I don't know whether, you know, people should, I mean, people want to call it Islamabad, but you know, you go outside somewhere beyond G13, it does not even look like Islamabad now. You know, the way they have constructed, I don't think that there were any bylaws which they were supposed to be kind of in accordance with as well. So where are we going? I mean, it looks like a chaos just after G13.
Achha, I think, but we were discussing very interesting points raised during our discussion. Particularly, you have pointed to very important aspect, and one is the Aisha's was talking about moving the people.
Yeah.
I think one of the aspect which is very critical is still our approach of urban development remains a single centric. We have to go for the polycentric approach. Everybody must not come the same place for the schooling, for health facilities, for employment. So this paradigm has to be changed. That's why it's it doesn't matter how many highways or roads you may construct.
Yep.
The traffic jam will be applicable. Secondly, what is happening, even Islamabad, I mean, it's a very, I think 2 million people are living in Islamabad.
Yes.
It's not a big population. What's happening in Islamabad? Just take an example. You also mentioned about the water scarcity.
Yeah.
There are only two sources of water. One is the surface water, other is the groundwater. In the surface water, again, there are the two sources. One from the Indus, other from precipitation in the form of rainfall. And the second, since we don't have an Indus around Islamabad, so we have to rely on the precipitation. And what is happening? The position of the groundwater. That the groundwater which was available at 100 feet, now it is not even at 600 feet. Even the new sectors, G13, G14 don't have doesn't have any water, no more, there is no more water.
Yeah.
So what has to be done? The only solution, the only solutions go for the innovative methods to like just harvest the rainwater, do the rainwater harvesting, make by law CDM must not allow any of the housing schemes, housing project, other infrastructure without having a provision of a rainwater harvesting system in that respective. This is one of the otherwise if our recharge will not balanced our extraction of water, there will be no water.
Obviously.
So
and that's where we are headed, by the way.
second aspect, I think you also indicated about you used the word smart. I think Aisha also used the
Smart
word smart.
motorways, sir, yes.
It must not be only applicable to the motorways or the cars. It has to be applied on the concept of the smart cities.
Exactly.
We have to go for the development or the conversion of the existing cities into the smart cities. That can only be done by using ICT tools, information communication technology tools. I can give you an example of Spain, where this the same practice has been applied. It must not be applied on a single segment of the urban component. Second, I think one of the area you have indirectly indicated about what is our planning of the cities. It seems there is no planning.
I mean, till G13, I think there was planning, but after that.
In the last 74 years, we have not added any single city except Islamabad. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous.
And nobody is thinking about it, sir.
I mean, the whole influx of the population, on one side, our population growth is about 2%, one of the highest population
Exactly.
all over the world, and other is the influx of the rural urban migrations. In most of you just see the city Karachi, unbelievable. Almost 2 crores, more than 200 million people are living in that country.
Exactly. And no water in that city.
And can that city sustain such a huge population? It's not possible.
Exactly.
It's not possible, obviously. So what we have to do, since the subject falls under the jurisdiction of the federal government as well as the provincial governments,
Exactly.
we have to go for again a long-term approach, again a strategic approach, and we have not seen any comprehensive urban policy consensus which must be a consensus oriented through the approval of the Council of Common Interest. I don't see any urban policy. If you don't have any urban policy, how can you go for the planning?
Exactly, that's true, sir. And I'm sorry that I'm actually going to stop you over here, but if, for example, if we are to look at the resources as the income, so I think that, we truly stand where I'm going to kind of say it in Urdu, Amdani Athani Kharcha Rupaiya, ladies and gentlemen, and this is not sustainable. We really need to kind of move towards some sustainable solutions as well. But at this point of time, we actually have to head out towards a short break. But once you guys are going to come back, I'll ask the former ID of forestry as well. And that is that, when we kind of talk about the colonial era forest law, do you think that is still going with the post-colonial era as well? So this is something which we want to talk about, and then we'll move on to Ms. Aisha. We're heading out towards a short break. Don't go anywhere, because when you guys will come back, we'll let the former IG speak. Let's do this. Good morning. right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for everybody who just got tuned into PTV World. You watching World this morning alongside Shahzad Hassan Khan. Today, earlier, ladies and gentlemen, we were in conversation with our most amazing guest. We were talking about forestry, we were talking about urbanization, and we were talking about green methods of transportation as well, and that too within the cities, within the urban areas. And if, for example, there are a lot of people coming from one spot to another, or for example, coming from their village to the cities to work and earn a good livelihood, I think we should really consider developing such transportation systems which are eco-friendly and they do not impact the climate change as well. But very quickly, before actually heading on towards a short break, I wanted to ask the former IG Forestry as well that, when we talk about the colonial era forest law, do you still think that it's cooing with the post-colonial era as well? So, sir, please go ahead.
Before I take up this difficult topic in very little time, I would just like to point out what Dr. Rashid Saab was saying about urban forestry and especially the growing water problem. I was lucky enough for the last 15 years, I was hands-free from the field forestry and I was in the policy. And to my surprise, I found certain legislation in some countries where it was a crime to plant trees without getting a NOC from the groundwater authority.
Obviously, and it should be.
And again, to my surprise, when with free hand and free mind, I was looking at domestic legislation in Pakistan. We have a wonderful groundwater act for Balochistan, where water management committees are there and they are to decide everything. So had they been functional, and it was in the mid-70s, a law of the 70s, had they been functional, then these wild growth of orchards and pumping of water and then creating bringing Quetta into a water starved zone may not have happened. The issue is that policy which is related to votes and quick results and not looking for the long-term aspects of sustainability is a big problem.
Sir, we have water mafias over here in our country. I've lived in Karachi for 6 years. They do not let kind of any institution send water through pipes anyways. They're like, if you need to get water, get a tanker. That's it. So, I mean, there are some people who are working for the benefits or they want Pakistan to kind of grow. Then there are people who kind of want themselves to grow rather than their country as well. So, these problems are existent and we have to move forward with these challenges. So, coming back to where I was asking about how the colonial era forest law is still going with that.
So, one more thing that this Recharge Pakistan is a good, initiative is a good program. We have been trying to do it since 2010 when there were super floods here. I was there in the National Assembly Standing Committee meetings and telling them the flood welcome policy and how the Chinese and other countries are using the benefits of floods for groundwater recharge. Believe in me, the parliamentarians were shouting at me, flood is devastating my constituency and you are talking about flood welcome policy. But the good thing is gradually we took a delegation of 10 people to visit Yangtze River all for 10 days in China, including 2 parliamentarians, and we've made the basis for this recharge project which this government is taking forward. Let's hope for the best. Now, coming to colonial era and post-colonial era forestry and linking it with the current massive tree plantation program, the story is that in the colonial era, the crown, the empire with headquarter in London was enjoying summer holidays in Egypt, getting leather for their shoes from Australia, the shoestring from Argentina, and the sun never set over 55 countries. That was one colonial power. There were others as well. And the engine of this empire was the military, of course, and the engine of the military, one of the major engines was forestry. And because in those days railway line and ships were the main means of transport. So for railway lines, you needed sleepers which were made of wood. You needed wood to run the steam engines, the initial steam engines. External combustion engines were made of used either coal or wood. And to get a sustained supply of this raw material, they made this global colonial era forest policy and forest laws, which we inherited after creation of Pakistan, and we are still on the same line with little mutatis mutandis, some changes, some not changes. But the thing is that they formed the basis of all policies which are interestingly, they are common on all the former colonies, and those countries.
There's no major changes. That's what you're saying.
And yes, and in all the continents, it is converting forestry into an institution, institutionalizing forestry through the Forest Service in India, Pakistan, Mexico. It was the same. But those countries which were not under colonial rule, they have their own policies and systems.
All right, and either we have moved on or we have moved forward from that or not is something which we'll come back to as well. Because sir, himself said that, for last 15 years he was into policy making. So we want to kind of know how he contributed. But before we do that, I'll move on to Ms. Aisha. So Ms. Aisha, you actually spoke about this green initiative or green waste initiative as well. And how do you think that they're actually making sure that the places we live in are more cooler? Because just a few days ago, there was this international day, and it was all about in fact the ozone depletion day. In fact, the ozone day where the theme this year around was keeping us, our vaccines and our food cool. So please go ahead.
So when we talk about green waste, it basically this was a concept that was introduced in Bogota.
Okay.
And for that, the mayor actually took a loan from the World Bank, and instead of making a road for cars, what he ended up doing was he made a road for walking and for people who can actually use their bikes and easy bikes, etc. So you mentioned that the distances are very long, and if you have to travel for a very long time, how can you walk? There are solutions around it as well, because
but imagine, I left from my house, wearing my suit, I have to do a morning show, paddling to my work.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be all sweat towards the end of the day.
Yeah, and for that, obviously, you need that kind of infrastructure, and such infrastructure was introduced in Bogota. So what they ended up doing was that they ended up creating a highway for walking where it was covered by trees.
Okay.
So the temperature was quite cool over there, and then they had benches where people could actually sit and relax for a bit and then move on. And now you don't have to actually pedal through your cycles, because we have easy bikes and we have electric bikes,
Yeah.
which are actually quite.
I'll come back to you as well, and very quickly, because I just need to move on to the solutions towards as well. And obviously, those solutions are there. We kind of need to adopt to the newer techniques as well, where everything is sustainable at the same time. But then, how far are we from kind of managing all of these things, or how we can come up with these solutions? So I'm going to move on to Dr. Saab, because he actually happens to be the Director of Public Policy as well. So, I think, and because after you, I'll move on to the former IG as well, where for the last 15 years, he was serving, and he said that, he was into policy making. So did he make a policy while he was hands-on at his job as well? So, these are something which we need to talk about.
Since I am a policy person, so obviously I always look forward. What is our benchmark? What is our benchmark? And I think we really need a comprehensive policy framework in context with the urban development. And this comprehensive policy framework must comprises of a number of aspects. One aspect is the legislation, which is related with the laws. As Dr. Nasir has mentioned, that we don't have the groundwater laws. Only in Balochistan there are, but we don't have a national legislations on the groundwater.
And even if we do, then we do not see any implementation.
And similarly, which I talked about, the rainwater harvesting and so on. Other is the land use planning. We don't have a land use planning. We don't have a comprehensive environmental planning. Plus, obviously, the other aspects we have to look forward, like infrastructure development, how much we need, what about the future state of our cities, how to go for a multi-nucleus development approach. So all these things have to come under the policy, and there must not only a policy in the shape of a couple of papers.
Yeah.
The policy must be accompanied with the implementation implementation plan.
Yeah.
Who is going to do what?
Yeah.
What is the responsibility of that? Where the federal government, provincial government, NGO, development sector, who is going to do what, and when it is going to be finished, and what will be the accountability process, and from where the resources will come.
Yep.
These things must be comes under an implementation plan. Otherwise, it will be again an addition to the existing graveyard of various policies in the corridors of the Secretariat.
Oh my God, I do not want it to be this sad towards the end of the show as well. But sir, I think you've rightfully pointed out that these are the things, these are the issues. We need to consider them as well. And so I think it's about time that we move on to that particular person who happened to have for the last 1.5 decade been into policy making as well. And whether did you make a policy which was implemented, and have you seen it for yourself in the first place, or do you think that there are other ways around to it as well? So please go ahead.
No, one person never makes a policy. Of course, I
been a
understand
part of the policy making.
you means the group.
Yep.
Yes. So the issue lied with the curriculum which we were taught in the Pakistan once prestigious Pakistan Forest Institute, where we were taught about forest policy and the history and what happened in 1952, 57, and we were sitting in the exams, and then when we came into as a practitioner, we thought that it was all true.
Yeah.
And then we had to see setbacks from the Ministry of Law and other departments, and at the highest level, I found out that there was never any policy in the history of forest policy in the history of Pakistan approved. There were many attempts, many were made, but the constitutional provision is in our country that forestry is a provincial subject. Who the hell is the federal government to make policies? This was the observation from the Federal Ministry of Law. So there was never one. And going back to history, why forestry is in the provincial list, the history is in the 1935 Government of India Act, where it was made a provincial subject. And in since that time, the federal Indian Forest Service officers, no batches were inducted. The last one who was inducted in 1935 retired in 1965 at the age of 60 years. And in India, they made a constitutional amendment to bring forestry in the concurrent list, so that the federal and the provinces can interfere in that. In Pakistan, 18th Amendment has nothing to do with forestry, because it was never in the concurrent list. It was never in the federal list. It is as it was. Coming back to policy, 2015, I think that was a major achievement, that the National Forest Policy 2015 was approved by the Council of Common Interest, all the chief ministers signing it. So that implementing it regularly is a way forward.
Exactly. Thank you very much for being with us. It was lovely to be in conversation. Thank you very much, Ms. Aisha. Thank you very much, Dr. Rashid. Thank you very much, Mr. Nasir as well. And for everybody who's out there, ladies and gentlemen, the only thing which I have learned so far is that, when you have such amazing people who can contribute towards the betterment of the country and the environment, I think that we really need to use their services and kind of call them up and, hey, be like, sir, please, we need your help. Aajan zara hamari madad kijiye. I think that's the way forward as well. Please make sure, ladies and gentlemen, that you write to us on our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all the social media platforms with the name of World This Morning, and you can definitely catch the repeat at 5 past midnight. I'm sorry for taking too long. Look after yourselves. 1, 2, 3. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you.